Welcome to the Navigator Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Navigator. My name is Brad Malone. With me today is Brad Dempsey from Solutions 360 and Joel Harris from Navigate. Welcome.
Thanks, Bradley. Great to see you.
Thanks. So, we think we're ending this, at least one of the cycles of COVID. And one of the conversations I've been having with lots of people is just, did they use this as an opportunity to really increase their leadership capabilities of their company, or did they waste it? What have you seen, and what would you use as some of the measures of, did the company really excel or did the company not?
I would say one of the first things that we saw from every company was, how do you deal with work from home? One of the things we saw was how quickly could they mobilize and get their workforce productive with video communications and with different methods of chat and other pieces of technology. And I think some companies were obviously much better than others. And I think our industry, the technology integration industry, was probably in a great place for to be able to take advantage of a lot of that technology. I certainly saw that.
Great. Joel?
So for me, I think the question of the maturity of the companies is, how fast do you recognize what is changing in your environment and how fast do you respond to it? So for me, as we work with our customers, the customers who recognize the macroeconomic conditions fastest and then responded to it, and then within the company, there were leaders who emerged as people willing to deal with the reality that faced them rather than what they hoped for. Most of us got this wrong. Most of us thought, I don't know, maybe we were in the minority, but some of us thought this thing would be over in 3 months. We really didn't plan for it coming. And so some people could stick their head in the sand and say, well, it's only going to last 3 weeks, a month, 2 months. Why trim our costs? Let's just get through it. And you saw even within companies, particular leaders emerge as willing to do the hard things in order for the survival of the business.
Right. So you're talking about choices. Yeah. My perception is more about data and information. So Bradford, as you were saying, it's like we're all virtual. How do I get people to be able to make decisions? You've just released a whole bunch of new dashboard capabilities. And yet, are we sharing those down to what you're talking about, Joel, that next generation of leaders who really need to make informed decisions? And that goes, I think, to the culture of the company. Am I transparent? So many people, it's like, don't truly show financial conversations. We still have project managers managing projects and not being able to see hours billed against profitability, because then they might know. So that's one of my key measures is really transparency, trust, alignment of vision to the company. It's like, are we letting our leaders, as you called out, not just accidentally happen, but really are we grooming them?
And I think that's a great point, Bradley, because even with the data, what's also important is workflow. And I think what we've seen is there were processes in a lot of these companies which required somebody to walk over to somebody else's desk. There were processes that were, there were file folders moving around within a company to share information. So it's the mature companies that had the ability to have flexible process and to adapt to this that I think have really thrived, and others who were really hurt because they didn't have that flexibility.
I think that just going on process and people walking around the office, you usually had one or two people who were cleaning up after everyone else not doing their job. And virtually, that's really hard to do. So I think the companies that had good swim lanes, good roles, good responsibilities, accountability, repercussions, and thank yous. So if you do a good job, you're noticed. If you don't, you're noticed. So that ability to just manage assertively, I think really also is a mark of maturity and growth in this day and age.
Absolutely. And while we're talking about maturity, I think another very important aspect that we saw, and we tried to do as much as possible, is the transparency with your employees about the shape that you're really in. I don't think you can help yourself by lying to people or even by looking at things through rose-colored glasses. You have to be as honest and as straightforward with people. And if you don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks, you tell them, we don't know what's going to happen in 2 weeks. But in 2 weeks, we're going to reassess and we're going to figure out where we're going. If we have to do that every 2 weeks, we have to do that every 2 weeks. But we have to keep that communication going and make sure that we're honest with everybody.
And Joel, you've been working with a couple clients that through both the strategy and operations cycle through a pandemic. And typically, you know, those are 2-day long sessions and all that. And you've done a lot of those virtually. What have you seen with the companies that really have taken this on?
The companies that really take this on start to understand that the planning cycle has to match what you know, right? So, and often what I'm trying to help our clients understand is you don't know when COVID is going to end, but what are the advanced leading indicators that are going to end? For example, in our industry, pre-sales engineering is a really good leading indicator. When the pre-sales activity kicks up, you're going to get busy 2 or 3 months later. Until the pre-sales activity picks up, don't bring everybody back regardless of what you believe about the situation. And so understanding leading indicators and paying attention to those and then actually taking action. So we spend a lot of time with our clients saying, what does the recovery look like? What will be the leading indicators so that we can get ahead of the market and not be the person who is left as the last person back to work because we missed the leading indicators. So we split the planning periods into 2. What do we do during COVID? What is the leading indicator that announces we're going to get out of COVID? And then what's the strategy post-COVID? And just, again, as Bradley said, just be realistic about what we're dealing with.
Yeah. And I also find like two ways I look at it is risk and courage. So, you know, we're in a time where we don't know the future,
Right.
and therefore we have to have the courage to make a decision, which is always a risk. But I always find that people go, well, I'm not going to make any decisions because I just don't know. And it's like, oh, that's the worst risk you could have picked.
That's right.
So, and that's that whole next generation is how do I grow people to really take authority and responsibility and have the courage to do so. So great. I appreciate it. And again, hopefully we won't be too much longer in this, but I think the best companies are going to come out of it way stronger because they built, you know, a community of practice, a community of leadership in their company and a culture of transparency and knowledge.